How is it going, everybody? It's me, Zimzilla, back again once again. I'm happy to anyone who is coming in. As always, we start these streams a little slow. This is actually gonna be probably a little slow of a stream. I'm probably gonna be doing other things later on in the night, but I thought mine's well get an old video that is needs to be talked about. It's been too long to discuss this one. But Akno Godri, what's up? It's good to see you on here. And I think we've got at least a few other people in here. It says we got five, four, few people. Heyo, we got Kaimo, Omega, what's up? Good to see you guys. As always, I should probably start showing this from now on. Just toss the link around, let people know that we're live. Just helps me, lets people know to come in here and just have a good time. So, what we're talking about tonight is going to be Kaiju Musings. It is by very interesting fellow, mind you. His name's Josh. I have no clue how to say his last name, but other places he has his own little name. I'm gonna show you the video in a second, but that's primarily what we're gonna be doing tonight. It's just gonna be the one video, but outside of the video itself, what it's gonna be is talking not just about it, but also the original post on DeviantArt that this kind of sprang from, as well as everything else that's kind of branched out from it, because I think it's an interesting discussion to have in regards to kaiju design, or how people who aren't really kaiju fans sort of see kaiju as a whole, or the genre or character designs in that field. So that's kind of the gist of it tonight. Still making Ultraman, you'll see it taking my time to develop it more. Awesome. Happy to hear that, man. Just let me know, and I might start up the Discord, because I do have a Discord. I just don't really use it all that often. But if any of y'all interested in joining it or being more active in it, I have no problems kind of fixing it up some more so it's more open to more people outside of a few friends. But without further ado, let's get into the video, shall we? And I also got a ton of links, so I'm actually going to be kind of moving in between all of this stuff here for you. So let's inception ourselves a little bit. There we go. This is the video. This is the original post, and these are everything else we're going to be looking at. But let's begin, shall we? Oh, nope, I just stopped that by accident. This is what happens when you don't stream in so long. You forget how to do everything. There we go. And also, I'll have the chat up in another window for myself, so if audio's not sounding good or it's a little too high, just let me know, and I can adjust that for you guys, okay? But anyway, let's begin.
So, this is a rather unusual video I'm doing here. It's in a way in a reaction.
Also, I just noticed he came in, but since I'm in another window, I cannot say it. How's it going, man? I'm happy you're in. It's good to have you, my man.
Video and kind of try to explain my train of thought. I recently, a few months ago, you could say, posted on Deviant, Twitter, and Facebook picture of my version of Godzilla.
So, yeah, this is his little version of Godzilla here. And for the context, this is also a couple of years ago. I have not been able to get on this sooner when this was fresh. But since everything's kind of died out and his thoughts have remained relatively the same, I think it was more appropriate to take it now instead of as the thoughts were developing and tensions, I guess, were higher.
As you can see here, that's my picture. And I got a lot of positive feedback. Quite a few people liked it. But I kind of expected this, but I also got a lot of negative feedback. even some razor hateful comments.
So the point that's made here is that the comments were rather hateful. So let's actually just do it like this. So let's just type in stupid. And I'm sorry that you're gonna keep on hearing beeps, but if something is not found on the page, it's gonna beep like that. But it kind of proves my point in a way. So stupid, nothing up there. Let's try ass. And found two. One of them is not even the actual word. It is. Actually, let's just read this one. Look at this post made by an artist, checking the comments and seeing a comment from a couple months ago. A guy that's being kind of an a-hole and replying means I have no life. Like literally, this the one time I find ass. No one's even talking about, like, it's not even directly to the artist himself. How about the F word? Let's see. Great, a monster design, effing awful Godzilla. I mean that if that is what you would call extremely hateful, this isn't recognized as Godzilla anymore. At this point, this might as well be just a camera. I guess we could consider this hateful as well. It's a cool creature design. I wouldn't call it Godzilla at this point. It misses the idea Godzilla as a concept, the consequence of man's sin. I suppose this does raise the question of however you can go the concept like Godzilla before it stops being Godzilla. Good point, raised by Absurd Potato. And one of my friends. I love this guy. He does raise a good point. When at this point does a monster stop being Godzilla, especially in terms of the design field? How about stupid? What about another word? Loser? Nope. Not even that. How about awful? So we got one awful again. Like, you really have to dig for anything that could be considered somewhat denigrating. But what can you do? Or let's even say let's load the rest of the comments here, see if the point can be proven further. Let's try awful again. Oh, we found two. Okay, now what's the other one? This one by some guy looks like his account timed out. This one's interesting. Godzilla was made for smelly, gross dudes that love watching monster trucks and thinking that smelling really awful and burping out loud are manly and only care about is seeing giant explosions and topless women when it comes to watching a movie. Yeah. Or here's another one. At least it looks neat and not a monster rampaging through stages, but instead acts like an actual living creature. Best Godzilla ever. I think it's ironic that the one person who's really happy to see this design is also the most denigrating to kaiju fans. It's always telling. But since we loaded more comments, let's see if we get more hits. F word. Let's go down. I'm trying to tell you, it misses the entire guy point of Godzilla. It's not that hard. Let's go here. Tennabigo Joe, your point is faulty. Oh, this guy was interesting. I've already seen him in his comments a couple of times. And who's he responding to? Is the same person? Oh, yep, same person, literally. And again, this is the same person who responds with this. So if you're gonna act rude, then acting like this is in no way, shape, or form being toxic or hateful. How about we do a phrase instead? This is stupid. Nope. Bad design. Really awful. Same person I found right there. Not good. Let's even try not good. Yeah. Like, the point I'm trying to raise here is that in the original post, you really have to go out of your way to find just posts that are shitting on this person. But you can find a lot of people who are very supportive and are very likely to be like, oh, I don't mind Godzilla and his many, many interpretations. Hey, someone brought up gatekeeping. It's funny. But I think my point should stand here that there's a lot of support. There's a lot of people who are disparaging towards kaiju fans, and there's very little act of hate. Her comments, your page not very surprising and annoying. Hello, smart, well thought ideas. Great artwork. Again, it's really funny. This could also be construed as hateful here, but considering what we've already found, and let's actually see. Let's look up awful. That was so around the same time. So it just attracted toxicity of people defending it. I think the term that people like to use nowadays is toxic positivity. And in fact, I think that's very apt. And what should also be taken into note is the fact that you have to really, like, again, you just have to look for any comment that's in any way, shape, or form negative without any kind of critique at all. Like, there's a lot of critique. There's a lot of people either just being like, oh, it's a great design. I love it. Or I don't understand. It's really interesting. And what's going on, Abyss? But let's get back to the video.
You might say. And I just wanted to address some of these points.
Actually, one thing I want to do is I want to scroll back real quick.
Wanted to even feedback, even some razor hateful comments, you might say.
The only reason I brought it back is because he kind of like laughs at this, and I'm not sure if it's because like he kind of feels like he's above it all, or he's just honestly lying because he's being really snivelly about it. But I don't know.
And I just wanted to address some of these points. Not because I really feel like I need to justify myself, but because I think the topic overall is rather interesting. And
if you don't feel there's any need to justify yourself, then I don't see the need for you to then justify yourself. This is why you make sure you reread your scripts or just kind of say you're going off cuff.
a good way to discuss certain aspects of internet culture and
good way to discuss internet culture when most everybody who is opposed to you is typing up very, very long discussions about why your design doesn't work, while everyone else who is super on board with your design are either extremely disparaging against the thing you're deconstructing and the people who like it. I guess that would be a very interesting topic to discuss if we're talking about internet culture, but I guess the point you're trying to come across just seems rather disingenuous, in my opinion.
the way we treat pop culture overall. So let's go into it. In the description of my picture on DeviantArt, I explained I'm not really a fan of kaijus, of giant monsters. In general, and for me, most of them are rather boring in design most of the time, and yeah, they don't really give me the same kind of joy I get from other stuff.
I guess that's fair. You know, you don't have to like everything. Not everything's made for every other person. But when you say kaiju are boring, at least I would appreciate it if you try to like explain in more detail why you think kaiju designs are boring. Because saying they're boring and then saying they don't work for you doesn't really help people understand your point further. It just tells people you don't like kaiju, and then when people see the discourse around people disliking your kaiju, then that just kind of paints a picture as to why people do not like your art or you. It's a matter of, I guess, optics would be the better word, but optics are trying to mean that you're trying to go for a specific idea. You're not, well, at least from what he's said multiple times past this event and this video specifically, that he wasn't trying to go for something specific. He was just giving his thoughts. But again, I feel that if you're going to make claims like, oh, this is boring or this is bad, at least try to support it in some way, shape, or form other than, oh, it just doesn't give me excitement. Like, what about it does not give you excitement? And I'm also, as you saw, I ramped up the speed of the video because I remember watching this earlier before the stream, and it was slow then. It's slow now, so I'm gonna be ramping up a little bit. So if you guys, if it seems a little too fast for you guys, just let me know. Rather the experience be for you rather than just for me. So definitely say if it's too fast in the comments, please. But keep going.
This is a completely personal view, and I actually wrote there that I don't watch monster movies or kaiju movies. Monsters can be a lot of things, but kaiju movies specifically. And people called me out and said, "Hey, how do you want to know if you don't like them, if you don't know them?" I actually know them.
So wait, if you know them, but then you don't watch them, so then you don't really know them.
I should say that I know these movies. I have seen lots of clips and sometimes read about them because it can be interesting for my own artistic research and everything.
I think a lot of people always say this, especially people in his own sphere, that you can't really like something outside of like you can't say, "Oh, I know this because I've read about it." There is at least someone who is more immersed within something will have a little bit more of an understanding unless you are very well read on it. And I doubt compared to anyone else in the community or even people who are like not super large in our space but still read up from time to time probably know more about the design processes or how like the franchise works, everything more than you do, just because you are a trained artist. So there's that. Was good, Raf? How's it going, my man?
To look at these things, also from an aesthetic point of view, but the films themselves, they don't really work for me.
So the films don't work. What about shows, animated or otherwise? Because when you say this, the movies, it tells me someone, or even like an Ultraman fan, for example, that when you say movies, I doubt you mean Ultraman movies or any other like more obscure kaiju stuff. It probably comes to mind either Gamera or Godzilla because those are the only two things that you've really looked at for your topics. Yeah, you may think it's sick, Raph. It's supposed to be a Godzilla design. It is a terrible Godzilla design. It is trash. Such as it's not. They're not even really volcanoes. It's just minerals that have sprung up, and that's a sort of excess that is coming out of them. So it's not actual volcanoes.
And I made quite a few of claims in that description and also afterwards in the comments. But also these negative comments made quite a few of claims about me. So let's dive into it. Overall, I think the reason I try to
It's really funny that he says a lot of negative comments, then refuses to actually state any negative comments, almost like he's being disingenuous or lying. Probably more likely than anything.
show Godzilla in a very new and fresh way is that I think the overall design is rather boring.
Why? But we'll hear what he has to say about that.
Or rather has become boring to me. Although there is quite a bit of change in Godzilla over the years, it never really challenges the viewer.
So it does change. It is different, but it doesn't challenge. Those are two completely different things. So you can have a design that does indeed challenge a viewer by taking something that is old, changing up a little bit, making it a little different. That will indeed challenge the design, but that doesn't necessarily mean it challenges in the way you want, or like this really terrible design does. Good example, Shin Godzilla obviously changes up the design a lot. A lot of the later Millennium designs do change things up. Shin does, Earth does, even a lot of the American properties all changed up Godzilla's design, but they all stuck to a faithful idea of what the character should be.
It's never too far from that what you expect, and as an artist,
Should so are you like the point that seems to be made is that art should always be challenging you, which isn't really an aspect of art that is necessarily universal. Like I'm always someone who says there is objectivity to art, but I would never say art always needs to challenge you. You can have very conventional art, but still have it be very beautiful art. There's nothing that states that art that does not challenge is therefore objectively bad.
as a speculative evolution artist and as a paleo artist, I like to challenge the expectations of my audience, whatever that audience is. So that was one of the points. The other point was that
this definitely also seems to be a trend with modern paleo artists is the need to always challenge a preconceived notion about extinct creatures. And I would say that one of the biggest example of this was with Saurian, where when Saurian was first in development, we saw a feathered T-Rex, and this was touted as the current science. As far as we know, T-Rex would have had feathers. This started a long line of feathered Rexes in media, and that still happens. And originally, before then, it was kind of more of a meme, but that the mimetic quality of a feathered Rex challenging the idea of a scaly Rex has now pervaded so much that now a feathered like JP Rex is now just as synonymous as a regular scaly Rex, and that kind of came to pass as we see in Jurassic World Dominion, where we see a very kind of downy feathery Rex, and to a lesser degree with Prehistoric Planets T-Rex, where there is feathering, but it's so minuscule that you can barely see it, because now from what we're seeing, T-Rex would not have this kind of feathery coating. And it's interesting to where there's always a need for these kinds of artists to then challenge, and until that challenge is thoroughly debunked, therefore they kind of move on to the next thing. And I guess it's because the idea of challenging preconceived notions, and I guess to some degree like rabble rousing, is good for them. So it drives clicks towards their art, their designs, and it gives them followers and rabid supporters of these ideas. So as a result, they sort of are able to cultivate this. And I think all artists do this to some degree, but I would say the language I'm using can be considered very negative, but I would say it's just easier to use this kind of language in this context, because there is definitely a lot of people who are very, very attached to certain theories and they will not let them go down without a fight. Considering, for example, all the big drama with Spinosaurus, the lips for theropods, that whole debacle, there are definitely things that people will die on when it comes to hills and paleontology. And I think this sentiment is what translates over into character design outside of speculative evolution or paleo art.
I wanted to create something that could be believable. There are numerous takes on a realistic Godzilla that have been done before. However, I think not in this way.
So the realistic Godzilla has been done, but not to something you like. But when people don't like it, it's somehow a problem, because clearly you didn't like the realistic Godzilla portrayals done beforehand, and that's why you made your own. So it's just it's interesting how there was such an adverse reaction to people being negative, or really more being constructive about your choices or your thought process behind your art, but you kind of have the exact same feelings and thought processes as you make your own pieces. Just interesting to note.
I did here. I will not really go into detail what I did here with Godzilla, but the animal is not far from being as large as the newest version, for sure. This creature is maybe just a little bit smaller than the original Godzilla, and it's much slower. It wouldn't be able to walk on land. So it's an overall quite distinct creature. But I still try to incorporate certain parts of the lore of the monsterverse into this. So I didn't just made something up and called it Godzilla. I had something.
I mean, you did. Just because you had something in mind does not mean you just made it up and therefore you got Godzilla. Like, mixing up what you say with a little bit more fancier language does not change what you did. We all make up things to come up with ideas. And considering how derived and how far away this is from any other Godzillas, and how much all those other designs, even 98, share with each other compared to this, it's just really telling.
In mind when I did this, and I was called out for doing this in the name of realism, really. But that too, realism is important for me, or not really realism, but credibility. Creating something that would be possible, would be doable, is something that is for me extremely satisfying. That was one of the main points.
I mean, Just because something is satisfying for you as an artist does
Of
not
course, that I wanted
necessarily
to
mean that it is also going to be satisfying for viewers. It's kind of why people took the reaction they did, or really just more the deconstruction, because saying it like that implies there is more malintent attributed to the people who were dissatisfied with the design, when in reality it was far more tame than he lets on.
that was one of the main points. And of course, that I wanted to create something with this that is certainly different from what you're used to. Yeah, then people said, oh, he comes from a paleoart background, so of course he would go down this route, but that's not how you would do a kaiju and everything. And sure,
That's not how you do a kaiju. Let's see if we can actually just find that on the page. Find a page. How you'd do a kaiju. Nothing. Or that's not. Let's be grammar specific. That's not. Oh wow, it's from him. So if I'm finding it, I'm only finding one example, then the phrasing isn't even here in the original post. Anyway.
from the point of a fan or a movie person, that's surely not how you design a kaiju. But that wasn't the point. I wanted to make. I didn't want to make a classic kaiju. That wasn't my intent. And I think what we see here, something that
I mean, if we're saying it's not a classic kaiju, then are we being very, very, very liberal with the phrase kaiju and just saying, oh, it just means strange beast, this animal's strange, but it is an animal, so therefore it is a kaiju, or are we say kaijus are monsters and we're being a little bit more honest with the term we're using? Because in that case, what this isn't a kaiju, this is just an animal. But if we're saying, oh, kaiju means strange beast, this is an animal, it is a beast, and therefore it is strange, quote unquote, therefore it is a kaiju, then again, it's still a bad kaiju.
observe very often also in paleoart is that these people have a very strong emotional attachment to the original designs, or the original design space, you could say. Because of course, every Godzilla in every movie, they are always a little bit different, but they occupy this morpho space, you could say. But as a paleo artist,
so Godzilla can be different because it occupies a space, so therefore it's able to change within that space, but not enough for you, but therefore it doesn't change. And as a paleo artist, you therefore then need to change it. It's very just tiptoeing around these definitions and these terms to therefore get to the point they're trying to make and therefore justify the choices, and then gaslight people into thinking what happened was worse than it actually was in terms of the backlash you got. It's just very interesting when people make these kinds of arguments.
I'm trained in constantly questioning my own beliefs and adjusting to a new scientific reality.
I mean, are you really challenging your beliefs? Because as far as we've seen throughout, like, your entire time on the platform, either DeviantArt or Twitter, anywhere else, your views haven't really changed. It's just a matter of, oh, if the scientists tell me this changed, then I'll change it. But it's not a matter of you changing your beliefs. Your core beliefs are exactly still the same. You follow science, and therefore what you draw is in keeping with science. It's not really a matter of changing belief. It's a matter of, is what I'm doing still in keeping with science? If that makes sense to the viewers.
And that's not what a kaiju fan, of course, has to do.
I mean, a kaiju fan may have to do this. Like, saying that a kaiju fan doesn't implies that, like, there may be people who can design kaiju who also do spec evo. Like, just the phrasing seems very off, and it's very strange, and it's a way that he's doing to put himself within this bubble versus the fans who took issue and umbrage with the design, which is just very odd. It's like, oh, just because you were trained to act in a certain way does not mean, therefore, that you always have to act in said way. It's almost like deterministic, if you will.
Usually. I think that was one of the reasons, for example, why Roland Emmerich's Godzilla failed, because It occupied um, in the morphospace a point that was far outside what the Godzilla fan was used to.
And then at that point, it also supposes that, well, from his perspective, 98 is still within the realms of Godzilla. But if you've seen any of my debates or discussions on the topic, you know why I don't consider it in that space. However, compared to this monstrosity, it definitely is closer to that space than this is. But are we try? He's trying to make the point that from just purely design aspect, because it wasn't something fans were used to, therefore that's why they did not like it. Outside of like other aspects of the film, it feels weird to say, oh, because it was outside this purview of Godzilla, therefore that is the only reason why people didn't like this movie.
And of course, the animal there is portrayed in a different way. It's a mother suddenly, and
I mean, Godzilla can be a parent, but it's just how it was done in 98 is bad. It seems to me almost like you don't know what you're talking about when you talk about kaiju, but you claim to have read a lot about them.
It's radioactive, but that's not really that important. It doesn't
It's almost like you don't know anything about kaiju because there's points where Godzilla's radioactivity has been less important, but people still like those incarnations.
have this atomic breath and something like that.
And people don't like that. And considering that if there's one thing that the original creator of Godzilla has said on the matter, and I'll just sort of quote the line, if Godzilla had been a dinosaur or some other animal, he would have been killed by just one cannonball. But if he were equal to an atomic bomb, we wouldn't know what to do. So I took the characteristics of an atomic bomb and applied them to Godzilla. This being specifically from Ishiro Honda, which was something that Steve Rifle picked up. It was in Godzilla Footprint from the Virginia Quarterly Review. Again, like the fact that people seem to forget the ass that Godzilla is not just an animal when designing it feels almost like, oh, I know that I know this and I don't want to, and I just want to ignore it, or I don't know this and I don't care. In his case, I think it's the latter because again, knows kaiju, but seemingly from the language does not really know anything about them. Just interesting to note.
So Roland Emmerich tried something similar actually to mine. I had never really a problem with his design, except for certain aspects of the anatomy of this creature that don't really work that well. Like the way to thin ankles and stuff like that.
It's interesting that a paleo artist talks about how bad biomechanically 98 is from a design aspect if we're going for realism, but what can I say? Broken clock, right twice a day, yada yada.
I'm straying from the point, but yes, there is a strong emotional attachment. You see it, for example, I see very similar stuff with fanboys, fan base, not fanboys, sorry, of Jurassic Park, for example, or Jurassic World.
Just because just because someone has an emotional attachment to something does not mean therefore you are bereft of said emotional attachment, because you seem very attached not only to defending your standpoint but also to the belief that going for something that is plausible or credible is what makes it a good design. It's just interesting to note, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
There's this deep longing and appreciation for the original designs, the designs that got you hooked for something. And
I mean, people do have their favorites, but it's very interesting that outside of very, very specific examples that are very understandable, a lot of people are usually pretty accepting of a lot of designs for Godzilla with almost very universal exceptions. But saying that kind of robs this point right here of its meaning. So,
Sure. I'm okay with that, if you are okay with that. But as a paleo artist, that's not the way we work. If you are that inflexible as a paleo artist, you will not last long.
Well, Godzilla's in paleo art, so I'm not sure why you're being a sniveling little coward about it and just saying, oh, as a paleo artist, you're not going to get there. Well, it's a fictional character. You make it very clear that you're able to change it because it's a fictional character. So therefore, having such a rigid dogma as to how you construct your art seems very odd to have, but then say, oh, a fictional character can therefore also just be flexible. It's really weird. And it almost seems like you are very rigid in terms of how you're able to design things.
I can tell you that. You have to constantly adjust and discuss and be open to critique and things like that.
Wait. I want to go back. Wait, did he say open and critique?
Things like that. I have to constantly adjust and discuss and be open to critique and things like that.
Open to critique. That is interesting. Because, I mean, if you have to change, the only reason you're really changing things is because if you found something that was directly wrong. So anatomically, if something is usually is wrong, you have to change it. There's no like reason for you to keep the way it is from your perspective and from your lens. And critique, what would be the point of critique if everything is speculative within reason? Therefore, there's no reason for you to actually be critiqued, and that's probably why you don't say critique well.
Like that. So I'm as a paleo artist, at least you should grow a very thick skin when it comes to these things. That's why I'm also not really bothered by this critique.
Not bothered by the critique, but there was 18 minutes worth of discussing this and several posts kind of alluding to this and responding to a lot of people's points on the original post, but thick skin and not really caring. I got you, don't worry.
I just think it's humorous and interesting to talk about this. Also, some people said I would hate kaijus. That's not really the thing. I just don't like them. What else? Oh yeah,
One sec. Let's see. You hate kaiju. Let's look here. Dude hates. Sorry again for all the beeps. Kaiju. Nope. Or let's try you hates kaiju. Nope. Again, nothing. Interesting.
Consistency. Some people said I wouldn't really get the point of Godzilla. You know, it's a character, not a creature. It's a force of nature, not just an animal. And no, really, I get that. I totally get that. It's just that this isn't important for me. And I think with what
So you understand, but you just don't care. Again, that kind of proves what I've said earlier, but at least now he's saying it, not me.
I did here, you could very much do a similar movie to a Godzilla movie. Certainly not what you would expect, but a similar movie to a Godzilla movie. Certainly not what you would expect, but certain.
Well, is it a similar movie, or is it? Or you could say you could make a Godzilla movie. There's this constant need to be very unspecific or non-committal with the language, because if someone nails him down at a point, I don't really think he'd actually be able to then say, "Oh, this is definitely a Godzilla movie because of this, and this reason." Almost like he doesn't know anything about kaiju, despite saying he knows about kaiju because he read about them.
Elements would still be there, and you would add more to it. You know, as a world builder, I'm striving for the non-conventional, in a way, the non-conventional but possible or plausible. And this that was one of the reasons why I tried this in the first place, to do something different. And of course, when you look at the MonsterVerse, the greater MonsterVerse, also the consistency is only vaguely there. I mean, as I said, there is this morpho space you could call Godzilla, but the design changes constantly. I mean, it changes size and form and everything. And of course, the technology is getting better and better, and you have more details or less details, depending on what technology is used, like high detail suit or a high detail CG model and everything. But there is a consistency isn't as in stone written as you think.
Well, again, why is it not as in stone? Because I could just as easily make the argument because Godzilla occupies a specific space, so there are limits as to what Godzilla can and can't be, and what we see is considered the limits. However, the reactions we see from fans, as well as a company's course corrections and how they treat their character, very much show that there are indeed limits. Saying that people think it's set in stone is a bit of a mischaracterization as to what you think kaiju fans think as a whole.
There is quite a bit of wiggle room, and also the role Godzilla plays changed quite dramatically, I would say. It is no longer the post World War II fear of nuclear war that Godzilla represents. That was basically only the first movie.
And Godzilla Raids Again. And Godzilla 84. And to a lesser degree, Shin Godzilla. And to a lesser degree, Godzilla versus Biollante. To a lesser degree, Mothra versus Godzilla. Both of the two Ghidorah films. Again, feels like you have not actually read anything about kaiju, but okay.
And after that, it shifted gradually more and more to something like, oh, Godzilla is now one of the good guys, and he's on the side of the humans and fights the other monsters. Or Godzilla is an allegory for pollution and climate change and stuff like that.
It's really interesting that anytime people talk about how Godzilla's had an amorphous character in terms of like how he's been portrayed, it's almost always about the Showa heel turn and Godzilla versus Hedorah. It's always funny, like non-kaiju fans, you can almost always like throw a dartboard, like throw darts at a board, and you can almost always see where they're gonna land, and it's almost always on Showa era heel turn and Godzilla versus Hedorah pollution message,
which is completely 180-degree turnaround. I mean,
so wait, is so pollution is there for 180-degree turn. I guess heel turn could work, but of course that gets corrected in Godzilla 84 and essentially stays pretty bog standard for all the Millennium series, but details, I guess.
it's sure it's still a force of nature, but it's no longer really evil. For example, it's kind of.
Well, Godzilla was never really evil in the first movie. He was antagonistic, but not evil. And again, mischaracterization. But if we're talking about antagonistic, yeah, that kind of sticks throughout a lot of the films.
It's one of the good guys. English is hard. Speaking is hard.
And apparently making a very salient point is hard.
Yeah. Something I think the last thing I want to address is that I think I actually said that, but I was quoted on this. I saw somewhere that if I would make a film on Godzilla, I would make it deliberately in a way that the fan base would hate it. I have to say, I think I actually said that. I can't really remember, and it might have been a little bit in the heat of the discussion. But it was actually, you have to understand it more as a kind of satire. I wouldn't make a movie just with Godzilla in a way that only so that kaiju fans would hate it. But you can be sure, if I had budget, only so that I wouldn't make a movie just with Godzilla in a way that only so that kaiju fans would hate it.
Just only, not I would not. It's really weird that yes, he would make a film that kaiju fans would hate. Just it wouldn't be the only reason, guys. I guess you could say that was a little slip of the tongue there, and he meant to just say I wouldn't make a film for the fans to hate. But considering every other point that's been made and every other mischaracterization, I don't put it past this person.
But you can be sure, if I had the budget and the film crew and everything, and the technology, I would certainly do a kaiju, a Godzilla movie that isn't targeted at the kaiju fan base. So a Godzilla movie without the fan base in mind, because that's just not important for me.
And there goes a lot of your money. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, 98 best-selling Godzilla movie. If you include inflation, and then people say that have no concept of economics. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. But another good example of a kaiju media that does not really have kaiju fans in mind is the Kaiju Preservation Society that I did the short review on, and I'm working on the long review at the moment. That is definitely not a book for kaiju fans, and anybody who would want to read it as a kaiju fan, you'd probably be extremely disappointed, and you'd probably feel like you wasted your money. And for a little bit of time, I thought that. But when I went back and read it, I could see last it wasn't like to spite kaiju fans. It just was kaiju without doing anything to get people into the genre or people who are already interested to therefore like it. So I think creatives who don't really have any investment in certain genres just shouldn't be making these projects or even doing art in this kind of space, because almost always the ideas aren't going to be something people are going to like. And frankly, they're going to get some criticism. Thankfully, in his case, he's a big enough artist and there's enough overlap between Paleo and Godzilla that he didn't get as much hate as he acts like he did. So there is that. But I think, frankly, if you don't care about something, I would not waste my time doing any kind of work in it, because I feel like there'd be no point where I would not see personally for me any value to add, or if it's something where it's just not something that appeals to me, I just wouldn't really care at all. Good example of this is Red Dead Redemption. It's a really good video game, but I have no interest in playing it. It's not a game for me, but there's a very healthy and active community around it. People really, really like it, but it's just not something I'd ever really, really want to ever take a look at.
I don't want to make art or a movie to please someone, to please a fan base. I want to make it in a way that it pleases me. And oh yeah, a few people also said that I'm very disrespectful against the kaiju fan base.
Let's try that one. Disrespectful against the kaiju fan base. 3, 4. So they get disrespectful, but right here, awesome job. A very interesting take on what a giant radioactive reptile might look like in Outworld. Well, our world. Just wait for the fans saying you disrespected the original design. Read the comments above, like clockwork. Oh, let's actually see. Kaiju bands. I see. Because you're not a fan of monster movies. Because I don't like it. Well, I respect you. Was that the hate we were talking about? Wow, it's actually pretty interesting. Oh wow, this is a great design. There seems to be a lot of love that's being had here. How would you know if it's too boring and all that if you've never seen or watched them? Just wondering. I'm not saying anything bad, just wondering. Again, was this the so-called hate? What a cool concept. Not personally a fan of this. Is this the hate we're talking about? Congratulations, now great design. Nice and creepy concept. Such a cool design. Wow, it's almost like the hate they was talking about was extremely overblown. One barely cannot call it Godzilla. It's more like a mutated Spinosaurus or something. Whatever. Was this the hate? Was the whatever the hate? Let's see how many other whatevers we can actually get out of this. Let's try whatever. Yeah, a huge, gigantic, like, discussion. It's very, like, in the most cases, not hateful at all. Let's see. Let's go all the way. Oh, there's mine. Alas, I'm not saying artists cannot design literally whatever. Yeah, and this is even directly directed at him. This is directed between these two going at it. See what's another whatever. So again, same thing. Yeah, wow. So much hate that was given to this design.
This makes me kind of laugh. I mean, come on, guys.
It makes me laugh how much of a sniveling coward and extremely disingenuous you are about the criticism you got, but hey, I guess we laugh at different things.
Being disrespectful for a creature that is completely fictional and everything. I mean, there has been so much worse disrespectful stuff against any kind of fan base before.
I mean, this is extremely anecdotal. This has nothing to do with this point here. But I remember him and someone else getting into an argument and him pleading and whinging about respect being very important. And someone said that respect was something that was not given, it was earned. And that turned him off to the discussion between this other person. I just find it interesting that he's acting that, oh yeah, having respect for the work that people have gone in or the design process of the people have gone into deciding a fictional creature is not important, especially because of the hard work they put in, and how you find it dissatisfactory is not important, but therefore you also demand respect from other people. It's just interesting where priorities lie for certain people.
It's not like I just make anything and call it Godzilla. I mean, I could also do that. I could just take a small lizard, maybe 50 centimeters long, and make it the color scheme of Godzilla. But anything else, it's just a small lizard, and then.
I mean, this is just a turtle with minerals on its back. It can't do anything Godzilla really can do other than the fact that they both relate to radiation, but not in the same way. So you did kind of do whatever and called it Godzilla.
Call it Godzilla. Could also do that. I didn't do that. No, I still try to incorporate some of the lore into this. And I feel like,
well, what lore outside of it kind of being near Japan and it's radioactive is, I would say, is that really as much as we need? Oh, it's a Japanese monster, so therefore put it near Japan, make sure it's radioactive, bada bing, bada boom, you have Godzilla, you can do whatever you want with it. I guess if that's the level that you want to go for as to what Godzilla is or can be or should be for people to design it, then I have a lot I could disagree with, but that would be something I'd have to ask him directly.
this is just a little bit silly. I hope at least that nobody is really hurt by my artwork. That somebody looks at this and is, oh no, what have you done? Oh, look how they massacred my boy. Sorry for the memes, but yeah, I think this is everything I wanted to say. This concludes this little video, and please let me know what you think, negative or positive, and please don't bash on the people that critique me. That's reserved to me.
It's really ironic. Don't bash the people who critiqued him, but that's kind of what happened.
No. As a paleo artist, I grew, as I said, you grow a quite thick skin, and I often just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show when I see such discussions at this point of time, because they are to me relatively meaningless. I just try to make interesting art. Okay, now that's all for now. Goodbye, and see you next time.
It's meaningless, but I made 18 minutes to this to justify my arguments. Interesting to note. And this is going to be the last things to end off the night outside of the video. So he went on to do a few other things. So he made a little Gamera here. The only thing that makes it Gamera is its tusks, and it's a turtle. Biolante, which is just a Venus flytrap. Apparently it caught something in its so therefore it's got the kind of Biolante head. There's a Baragon. And then this is the quote-unquote Godzilla versus Kong, except obviously Kong looks less like Kong. It looks more like a quote-unquote plausible giant monkey, but Godzilla died under his own weight because it can't come onto land, so therefore you can't really have Godzilla versus Kong. And essentially it's kind of satire art like this because, oh wow, two monsters fighting is really, really dumb, don't you know? Wink wink, nudge nudge. But it's also, again, same kind of deal there. I've before the stream, oh right here, horrible take. The really thing, why is your take not horrible, my good sir? It's at least better than the MonsterVerse. Was that the most of the hate? Like, there really was so little hatred for any of these pieces because this guy gets so much love anyway that he had to blow things out of proportion to make sure it appeared better than it really was. But then he went on to have the whole Rodan design because MonsterVerse Rodan is just really, really bad. And they mutilated a pterosaur. So then here's a random pterosaur that's just big. So therefore, big pterosaur means Rodan because that's all really kaiju means to most people like this. Is just, oh, it's a big animal. What's its animal group? Therefore, that is all it means. Let's do something completely different. And I tried looking through a bunch of takes he made, like on Twitter, where he was getting hate. Could not really find any. Again, these were just the results of the stream. Tried looking for the stream, like I know it was somewhere else, but I just could not find it. And there wasn't really anything of interesting note there to discuss. And it was also a couple hours long, so we've been here even longer. And again, this was the original post. This was on Twitter. Still, like, no hate at all. And then there was this one. This one was made like a while later because this was done around June. This was May. But here's the thing, though. This one was done later. But right here, if this is supposed to be like Godzilla, wow, it kind of looks closer to Godzilla than the other design that he did. It's just really funny, almost like if he swallowed his pride and said like, oh, let me take the basic shape and see what we can do somewhat plausibly. then I think a lot of people would probably have been less upset about it. And the argument that he makes about like him being able to do these designs and not really get any hate is that he just has a tiny footprint in the fandom. So because he has no power in the fandom, therefore any kind of criticism he gets really doesn't mean anything. It's just interesting to note because even if you don't have power in a certain context now, that does not mean that therefore your ideas cannot proliferate and therefore you do gain more power within said fandom. But I also did do a small little analysis here. This is just the image brought up in a little bit more detail. And as I was saying, when it comes to all the Godzilla designs, even the more radical ones like Shin and Earth, even 98, they all share a lot more in common with themselves than this does with any of them. And as he says, they all kind of inhabit the amorphous space because they are still adapting a character. But what's interesting is that this is far more closer to something like these just giant reptiles. Although ironically, a Tarask from D&D or even Taro from Sinbad, they both do more Godzilla-y things than this does, even though they aren't radioactive. But if this just a giant reptile that is radioactive, but then again, we can sort of strain what Godzilla is or isn't. So therefore, does being radioactive or being close to Japan matter that much? If the Dino Croc from Dino Croc versus Super Gator, we call this Godzilla. I mean, hey, it's just a fictional character, so we can do whatever we want. Same thing applied here. The Giga from the new Jurassic World movie that's going to be coming out. Spiny reptile kind of rearing up. We can call it Godzilla. Or this giant semi-aquatic reptile from Godzilla. Actually, yeah, no, this is Godzilla now. And what's really interesting is that I think this image here is a Megalania from D&D. And I think every paleo nerd is screaming that this is a Megalania. But it's just interesting to note that both this and the Redosaurus closer to this and all of these. And just kind of wrap it off. This was just like a interpretation of a Raptorex from Warhammer 40k, and obviously a Tarask from D&D. But the reason I'm bringing these three together is that I would prefer these two over as Godzilla designs than this because both in character and shape they are closer to what Godzilla can be rather than this travesty is, because ultimately it's just a radioactive animal disturbed by, well, the idea he thought up was either fishing or mining disturbs the creature, therefore it causes ecological damage rather than like actual direct damage. However, of course, that's not really stated why, and his own lore contradicts himself because these creatures don't move too much. But if there was enough radiation being pumped into the water, as he says, why would these things actually move if there's already enough radiation on the floor here for them to feed on? Was it really that much? And considering what we do know about some of the leaks and what we do know is on the seafloor, is it plausible? Probably. Would it actually work if you really broke it down as much as he is now? Probably not to his own credit. And I think that kind of defeats the point of what he's trying to do here. But this is just an interesting small video I wanted to do and discuss when it comes to everything, because this had gone on so long ago, but since everything has now kind of died down, I wanted to give my thoughts here. And I guess we could call this a quote unquote challenge, maybe. I don't know if he ever does see this video and wants to have a discussion about this again. Although someone actually responded to this on Twitter saying that he's moved on, so he clearly doesn't care. And if he doesn't care, then I mean everything is still fair on the table for me to discuss. But that's neither here nor there. Yes, honestly, for anyone who is watching still, I understand if that's the reaction. I think it was important for me to sort of get my thoughts out there as to how people outside the fan base kind of view things in the fan base and how we kind of discuss things on a design aspect. But I was only going to be doing this for a single hour to get the video out, but I'm happy that 9 of you actually stayed around for it. And as always, guys, I am Zimzilla, and I'm getting some more videos down the pipeline. I have more work actually, so that's kind of impeding me from doing more videos than I really want to, but I'll try to get something out soon. There was something on my Instagram that talked about a new script for a kaiju review, so that doesn't mean I'm getting those out, but take care all, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.